Columbia on Launch Pad 39A, awaiting liftoff on the first shuttle mission. The ascent team that day was led by Flight Director Neil Hutchinson, whose call sign was Silver Flight. He was assisted that day by a young astronaut named Dan Brandenstein, who served as the spacecraft communicator, or Capcom. Brandenstein would later fly in space 4 times, 3 times as a shuttle commander. Today, weather permitting, Atlantis will display its power and spectacle one last time under the direction of Flight Director Richard Jones, whose call sign is Sigma Flight. Jones will be assisted by Capcom Barry Wilmore, who will be talking directly to the crew during Atlantis' 8.5-minute ride to orbit. Wilmore is joined on console by astronaut Lee Archambault, who is monitoring weather conditions at the Kennedy Space Center. Archambault is in direct contact with Deputy Chief Astronaut Rick Sturckow, who is flying the shuttle training aircraft around the vicinity of the shuttle landing strip at the Cape. Sturckow is assessing the weather in the event Atlantis has to perform a return to launch site abort. Jones has already polled his team for a go for launch from a systems perspective, as has the International Space Station Flight Control Team, led today by Flight Director Emily Nelson. At the time of Atlantis' launch, the International Space Station will be flying about 235 statute miles over the Pacific, east of Christchurch, New Zealand. Atlantis' launch is timed to match the moment when the Earth's rotation carries Launch Pad 39A into the corridor of the station's orbit. Shuttle flight controllers here in Houston are watching weather conditions at the overseas abort sites in Spain and France, which would be used in the event of an engine failure early in Atlantis' climb to orbit. Zaragoza, Spain is the prime transatlantic abort site today for Atlantis and its crew. The weather there is pristine. At launch, Atlantis will be sent aloft on the collective power of its 3 liquid fuel main engines and its twin solid rocket boosters, combining for a total of 7 million pounds of thrust. 30 seconds into the flight following its roll maneuver, the computers will throttle the main engines down to 72% of rated performance, designed to lessen aerodynamic forces on the shuttle's fuel tank and the orbiter's aero surfaces. The engines will throttle back up to 104% of capability 20 seconds later.
Go ahead, launch director.
Shortly after solid rocket booster separation, the orbital maneuvering system engines will ignite for 1 minute 23 seconds, providing an assist for the shuttle as it heads uphill. And a little less than 6 minutes into the flight, the onboard computers will command the main engines to swivel, allowing Atlantis to roll to a heads-up position above its fuel tank. That maneuver allows Atlantis to gain more favorable communications with the tracking and data relay satellite system. 8.5 minutes after launch, the main engines will be commanded to shut off, and the shuttle will separate from its fuel tank. Atlantis will settle into an elliptical orbit around 135 statute miles above the Earth at apogee, which will be refined to a higher elliptical orbit above the Earth about 37 minutes into the flight through a firing of the shuttle's orbital maneuvering system engines. Additional rendezvous maneuvers will be executed over the course of the next 2 days, bringing Atlantis to its final docking with the International Space Station on Sunday morning. Seconds after discarding the external fuel tank, Commander Chris Ferguson will execute a maneuver to place Atlantis in the correct orientation so that mission specialist Sandy Magnus can use digital cameras to capture high-resolution imagery of the tank as it drifts away. Because there are no crew members on the middeck for this launch, there will be no time for handheld video captured of the tank as it separates, only digital photos. Atlantis' 4 crew members will go to work shortly after the shuttle's payload bay doors are open, activating systems, unstowing gear, and preparing for their first 8-hour sleep period in orbit, which will begin around 7 p.m. Central Time. The sense of history, the legacy of what has occurred here over 3 decades, is palpable here in the shuttle flight control room as Jones and the ascent team stand by to take over control of the last journey of a space shuttle at solid rocket booster ignition. At T-minus 9 minutes in holding and with history in the offing, this is Mission Control Houston.
Houston flight NTD on 212.
NTD Houston flight on 212, go ahead.
Okay. Any updates to our launch window and or lock stream back hold times today?
No updates.
All right, very good. Let's see, OTC, TBC, PTC, LPS, MILA, STM, Safety, SPE, LRD, SRO, CDR, and CGLS. We have our final launch window has been selected